You've probably driven behind a semi grinding through gears on a long uphill grade. The engine drops, climbs, drops again. That sound, you assumed, was disappearing. Automatics replaced it everywhere else. Cars, pickups, even a lot of newer trucks. But somewhere in America right now, an owner-operator just paid extra money for a 1998 Peterbilt with an 18-speed manual stick and a clutch pedal. He's not alone. So what does he know that the industry doesn't? Why, in 2026, with around 80% of new long-haul trucks rolling off the line with automated transmissions, are owner-operators still picking, and in some cases circling back to, the 18-speed manual? The easy answer is they're cheap and stubborn. But that's not actually the reason. The real answer involves a federal regulation written in 1992, a $7,500 a day downtime number that scares fleet managers, and a piece of trucking history being phased out right now, and the answer connects to something you ate this week without thinking about it. There are 4 reasons this is happening. Most people only ever hear the first one. By the end of this, you'll never look at a passing semi the same way again. But let's start with what almost everyone gets wrong. The obvious answer is the one drivers themselves give first. I like to be in control. It sounds like pride. It sounds like nostalgia. It is neither. Control, in an 18 speed, is not a feeling. It is a measurable engineering advantage that shows up the moment a load gets serious. Here is what that gearbox actually is. A 5-speed main box, a range selector that doubles every gear into low or high, and a splitter that splits each of those again. 5 times 2 times 2 equals 18 forward ratios. At the bottom are crawler gears so deep a driver can launch 80,000 pounds from a dead stop on a grade. At the top are overdrive ratios for cruising. In between, fine-grained control over every revolution of the engine. But here is what almost nobody outside trucking knows. The flagship automated transmission for heavy haul, Eaton's UltraShift Plus MXP 18 Speed, is, by Eaton's own description, built upon the Eaton Fuller 18-speed manual transmission design. The industry's automated future is the same gearbox the old guys are buying, with a robot bolted on top. And that robot has a problem at launch. By the manufacturer's own admission, an automated manual transmission must cut engine torques at launch to protect its starting clutch. Translation: when you are loaded heavy, on a grade, at a dead stop, and you need every ounce of torque the engine can produce, the automated manual transmission is throttling you back. The driver does not get to override that. On soft ground, automated manual transmissions can overheat and cut power to protect themselves. That is not a complaint from old-timers. That is an engineering note. Now picture the consequence. A misjudged shift on an icy descent locks the drive axle. A 130,000-pound load slides. A trailer of vaccines worth more than the truck ends up in a ditch. Therefore, when an owner-operator says he wants control, what he is saying is that the cost of being wrong is too high to outsource the decision to software that throttles him back precisely when peak torque matters most. But if it were only about control, this story would end here. It does not. Because the real fight is not on the road, it is on the repair bill. Here is where the math gets ugly. An automated manual transmission, AMT, at the order desk costs $1,500 to $2,000 more than a comparable manual. That is the entry fee, and that entry fee is the smallest number in this section. A manual 18-speed has gears, shafts, and a clutch, 3 categories of parts refined for 60 years, and basically bulletproof. An AMT keeps all of that, and adds 2 electromechanical actuators, a transmission control unit, sensors, wiring harnesses, and software. Every addition is a thing that can fail, and every one requires specialist diagnostic tools many smaller shops do not carry. Here is the number that quietly drives fleet decisions. By Allison Transmission's own published figures, An AMT clutch failure on a mixer truck can cost up to $7,500 per truck per day in downtime before any parts get replaced. For an owner-operator, downtime is not an inconvenience. It is the entire business stopping. A week waiting for an actuator from a regional warehouse is the difference between making the truck payment and missing it. Now stack that against a manual. A clutch replacement runs $1,000 to $3,000. A full rebuild runs $3,000 to $7,000. There is nothing to diagnose with software. You drop the box, look at the parts, and replace what is worn. Older mechanics can do it in a barn, and this connects to something on your dinner plate tonight, but we will get to that. Here is the twist. Eaton's flagship Ultra Shift Plus 18-speed automated manual transmission, the most advanced automated heavy-haul transmission Eaton makes, is built on the Eaton Fuller 18-speed manual gearbox. The transmission underneath is the same gearbox a 1998 Peterbilt has. So when an owner-operator buys a manual, he is not buying an inferior version of the future. He is buying the load-bearing component of the future without the failure points that turn a Tuesday into a $7,500 problem. But the brutal economics are not even the strangest part. The real reason this fight is heating up runs through a federal regulation written in 1992 that has slowly been closing one door at a time for 33 years. Go back to 1956. Eisenhower signed the Federal Aid Highway Act. The interstate highway system starts going in. Suddenly, a truck can leave Los Angeles in the morning and reach Chicago without stopping at a town. By 1970, there were more than 18 million trucks on American roads. The transmissions that grew up alongside that build-out were the Eaton Fuller Road Rangers, the 13-speed first, then the 18-speed RT and RTLO series. They became the sound of American long haul. But in 1992, federal regulators created something nobody could have predicted would matter this much. It is called the E-restriction, codified at 49 CFR Section 383.95. If a CDL applicant takes the skills test in a vehicle without a clutch and gear shift, the license they receive bars them from operating any commercial motor vehicle with a manual transmission, ever, until they retest. The Department of Transportation defines automatic as any transmission not operating fully on the gear shift and clutch principle, which by definition includes every AMT on the road. The rule sat quietly for years. Then, automation took off. Modern commercial driver's license schools, racing to get drivers through faster and cheaper, started training and testing almost exclusively on automatics. Today, a brand new commercial driver's license holder can walk out of school legally, barred from driving the truck the owner-operator just bought. The pool of drivers licensed for manual transmissions is shrinking, not because drivers cannot learn, but because the test path keeps producing licenses that allow only automatic transmissions. And here's the detail that makes the situation almost theatrical. Eaton discontinued the RTLO 918B 18-speed in June 2023, and the RTLO 19918B in June 2024. The company that invented the gearbox is winding it down at the same moment owner-operators are buying every used one they can find. So the manual is not dying because nobody wants it. It is dying because the regulatory pipeline that produces drivers no longer produces drivers who can legally drive it. Therefore, what you are about to hear should change how you see every truck on the highway. Here's where 2026 collides with the rest. In 2024, the EPA finalized Phase 3 emissions standards. Starting in 2027, the limits on nitrogen oxides drop roughly 80%, and to meet them, manufacturers are bolting on a new generation of compliance hardware. Industry analysts project that trucks from 2027 will cost $30,000 or more per unit above their 2024 equivalents. For an owner-operator running on margins measured in pennies per mile, that is not a price increase, that is a buyout. So they are buying older trucks, pre-emissions Peterbilts. Kenworth W900s, Freightliner Classics. Trucks built before the federal cliff they want to stay on the right side of. Almost every one of those trucks has a manual transmission, most of them 13-speed and 18-speed transmissions. The return to manuals is a market response, measurable, quantifiable, and traceable to a specific federal deadline. Now we are about to see how all of this lands in the cheese aisle of your grocery store. Because every gallon of milk, every loaf of bread, every refrigerated tray of chicken, every Amazon package on a porch, somewhere in the chain, there is a Class 8 truck. A growing share of those are owner-operators, operators running pre-emissions iron with 18-speed manuals. The cost of your groceries this year reflects, in part, the truck payment of the driver hauling them. When that driver chooses a manual because an AMT will cost him $7,500 a day if it fails on the road, your milk price is quietly absorbing that decision. So here is where you actually land. You pulled in behind that semi thinking you were listening to nostalgia. Old men hanging on to old habits, the last gasp of a dying skill. But what you were actually listening to was an 18-speed designed for loads no AMT can launch at full torque. A federal regulation quietly closing off the manual driver pool one CDL test at a time. A $30,000 emissions, premium-pushing owner, operators toward older iron, a downtime risk of $7,500 a day fleets hedge against, and an AMT industry whose own flagship 18-speed is, by its manufacturer's admission, a manual gearbox with a robot bolted on top. Therefore, the going back is not sentimental. It is a calculation. Owner-operators are reading the same emissions deadline, the same repair bills, the same CDL pipeline as the AMT manufacturers, and they are arriving at a different answer. You are not just looking at an old transmission. You are looking at the load-bearing piece of an industry deciding what American trucking will look like in 2030. The next time you hear a truck climb gears up a long grade, you are not hearing the past. You are hearing the BET. And if you think 18-speed gear ladders are interesting, wait until we get into how some of those drivers descend a 7-mile mountain pass without ever touching the brakes, and the engineering principle that makes it possible.